Hello, everyone. I wanted to take a few minutes and talk with you about mindfulness. This is something that we have talked about a few times, and actually, we talk about it a lot in the programs. Mindfulness is something that we use often to help us to both manage our feelings and our emotions, but also to help us to manage how we feel physically and manage our pain. Mindfulness is not anything magical. It's not something that requires a lot of skill. And while it is, paying attention to the present moment, it's much more than that. Mindfulness is a way of looking at the world, or more exactly, of being in the world. So, what I mean about this is paying attention to what you think about while you are doing what you're doing, moment by moment, even at this particular moment. Being present means being aware of what's happening in this very moment. Now, in this very moment, there's lots of things happening. There's how you feel physically. There's how the experience of the place where you're sitting or standing or walking is. It's the sounds you hear. It's the temperature in the room. It's the light. It's the experience that you're having at this very moment. And notice how all of those things are happening at once. So there's nothing about mindfulness that is either boring or simple. It's very complex. There's lots of things happening. Now, even as you're doing this, even as you're paying attention to all of this, you're thinking. You're thinking about being present. You're thinking about what mindfulness is. Thinking is actually talking to yourself. What you're saying to yourself is all important because it's at that moment that you become aware of what's happening at this very present moment. Now, as I've said all these things, you might be aware, for example, of how you feel somewhere inside your body. You might have a sensation of pain. And if you do, and if you pay attention to that, you'll notice that the pain gets worse just a little bit, just by paying attention to it. Go ahead and keep paying attention to it. And as you do that, you might notice that it changes. It might get worse. It might get better. It might change in sensory awareness, meaning it might feel different. It might move. It might get less, smaller, or bigger, or spread, or shrink. That's the thing about sensory experience. If you pay attention, it's always changing. It's always changing because every moment is a new moment. And every experience that you have is new for that particular moment. Now let me try and explain this a little bit differently in a way that maybe makes a little bit more sense. So if you think about what's happened to you in the past, meaning the things you've done, the experiences you've had, your memories of events that you've participated in, you'll find that there are thoughts that have emotional sensations associated with them. You'll probably feel things like pride. You might feel happiness in your memories. You might have no emotional responses to those memories at all. Now, on the flip side, you might also have memories of guilt or sadness or apprehension. I wish it hadn't happened. So there could be some negative associated memories as well. But notice that when you think about those things at this very moment, that you're attempting to bring those experiences in the past to this moment. And the truth is that what happened to you in the past will never happen again. Ever. What you have experienced in the past is done, and it will never happen again. And as you try to relive some of those experiences, you'll notice that it isn't exactly the same as your memory of it, largely because you can't relive an old experience. An old experience is in your memory and nowhere else, because it is done. People who dwell on the past or often think about things that happened to them will often report feelings of depression or guilt or anger. And they hold on to this as they hold on to those memories of things that happened in the past in this very moment. And yet, those things will never happen again. Conversely, people who are always thinking about what's going to happen, like the future, people who are always planning, always wondering if they do this or they do that, maybe things can be different. Trying to ensure that things in the future will be better somehow. There are often other emotions associated with these kinds of thoughts. Notice we're still talking about thoughts and what you think about. Those emotions are oftentimes anxiety, fear, apprehension, worry. And it's very common for people to realize that once the thing they're thinking about, the action or the activity that they're worrying about comes to pass at this very moment, that it's not nearly as bad as they had thought it was going to be, or their apprehension was unfounded or unnecessary. I've even had people say to me that had they not planned, it could have been worse. And I ask them, how do they know that? And they don't know that because they've never really let it go. Now, the truth is that what happens in the future only happens at this very moment. There is no future except for this very moment. There is no past either, except for this very moment, because you've already lived the past. What we're talking about here is that living in the moment is the only place that we actually live. When we think about the future, we often are feeling apprehension or fear or worry. When we think about the past, that can engender feelings of depression. That can also engender feelings of happiness or pride. But living in the moment, meaning thinking about what's going on in your life right now, right this second, what you're experiencing in every way that your body is available to experience it, brings you what kinds of feelings? Some people say they feel happy. Some people say they feel nothing. Some people say feeling nothing is happy. But the truth is that if you pay attention to what's really going on right now in your life, at this very moment, what will happen is you will not experience as much or any anxiety or apprehension, nor will you dwell on the past. And more importantly, you might start to wonder what is going to happen next. What will really happen? And how will you experience it? We all know people who seemingly are optimistic or happy, or, they behave with wonder at things that they experience. These are people who live in the moment. Now, that's not to say that we don't plan and, schedule appointments and things like that. We all do that. I'm not talking about that. When we're doing that, we're not living in the moment. And we have to do these things. There are also other automatic things that we do, like driving our car, for example. Very automatic. It's almost hypnotic, actually. And yet, we're not really living in the moment there. We're thinking about other things. We're listening to the radio, or thinking about what we just did, or what we're going to do, or how hungry you are, or how tired you are, or maybe nothing at all. Being in the moment is a deliberate effort to just sit and be with yourself. There's nothing to do. It's actually quite effortless. And it's something that we all can do. We don't spend all day doing this because we have to do some other things to live. But it's something that we can do and we should do. As you notice that, and as you think about that, notice how your pain has changed. Notice how your fatigue has changed. Notice if you're feeling dizzy or having a vertigo problem. Notice how that's changed. Notice how your physical body changes just by paying attention at this very moment. And notice how effortless it is. The more you just notice how things feel, you're not really reacting to it. You're not really saying, oh, it's really bad, or it's getting worse, or it's getting better. You're not reacting to it. You're just noticing it. I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder if the pain's going to change. I wonder if I'm going to feel more energy. I wonder what's going to happen next. And that, my friends, is mindfulness.